Welcome to part three of our pivot table analysis. Just a reminder that we have an instructions tab here, and currently we've done all the way through row 8 there where we inserted the line chart. This video is going to focus specifically on grouping. So back over on our income data sheet, you can see we have various years of education, and in the pivot chart, you can see the trend here. There isn't a whole lot of entries there, but suppose you wanted to, instead of having 8 through 18, suppose you wanted to group these in chunks of, say, 3-year increments. To do that, you simply click on one of the cells, and there's a few different ways to do this, but I usually right-click, and one of the options is group. Now, it's very important that you only have one cell selected. If you have one cell selected among that list and you right-click and group, you'll get a window that pops up that says, how do you want to group these? And it defaults from the lowest number to the largest number, and then it asks you what interval you want to group by. Sometimes you want to go starting at 1 or 0, or if you want sort of a fixed scale of 1 to 100 or something like that, you might change these first two entries, but I'm going to leave them as is since that's the range of data that we have in this data set, 8 through 18. But I'm going to change the 1 to a 3. And that'll group entries from 8 through 11 together. You'll see when I click OK, I've got 8 through 11, 11 through 14, 14 to 17, and 17 to 20. And notice that my chart is automatically changed as well. And it's a little bit cleaner depiction of the data. So now we can see sort of a clear trend. You can still use the slicers. So there's the females, there's the males. So that's one way to do grouping, and it's what I call grouping in fixed intervals. So over in my instructions, I'm going to stray from these a little bit. I'm going to show you a little bit different way to do grouping. So I'm going to undo the work that we just did here. So I'm going to click the undo a bunch of times until I get my grouping back. So suppose instead of grouping in fixed intervals, I wanted to manually select my own groups. So with years of education, in the American system anyway, you have 12 years until you graduate from high school. When you have 2 years of college, sometimes they might call that an associate's degree, but when you have 16 years of education, generally you've earned a bachelor's degree, and 18 years of education, maybe you have a graduate degree. So rather than having just fixed groups of 3, I'm going to manually select different years of education and lump them together as a group. So I'm going to select 8 through 11 and a half, and then I'm going to right click and select group. Notice that I don't get a window anymore. It just automatically grouped them together and called it group 1. And I get this kind of funky looking table that has indented entries, and then I have a label called group 1. What I want to do is I'm going to change the label from group 1 to something meaningful. I'm going to label it no high school degree. And then I'm going to click this minus sign in order to collapse the entries within the individual 8, 9, 10, 11, and so on. Now for 12, we don't really have a group there, but I'm going to relabel the 12 entry as high school degree. And after I enter that, I'm going to hit that minus sign to collapse it. And I'm going to lump 13 and 14 together. So I'm going to select where it shows 13 all the way down to the second 14, and I'm going to right click and group again. So it's going to put 13 and 14 together, and by default it's going to put that as a label of group 2. But I'm going to change group 2 to some college. So it indicates that these records have more than 12 years of education but have not earned a bachelor's degree. And again, I'll collapse it. And then I'm going to relabel 16 as bachelor's degree and collapse. And 18, I'm going to label that as graduate degree. And collapse it. I think I may adjust a few things here. So instead of years of education, I'm going to call this degree earned. Average earnings is still fine here. I don't really like the line chart style. So now that these are groups that kind of have labels instead of, doesn't really make as much sense to have a continuous line here. I would say it's still fine, but if you want to, you can click over here, and I right clicked on the chart and I just selected change chart type here. And now instead of line, I'm just going to change it to column. And I'll just click OK. And you can see now you have a similar result, but grouped into years of. So maybe I'll change the heading on the chart title as well, average earnings by degree earned. And I could also change the name of the sheet, earnings by degree. And since we've done some work, we want to save our file.